The forest had a way of making you feel small. Not in the cruel way the pack used to, no sneers, no whispered comparisons, but in something older, more honest. Here, among the towering pines that scrape the belly of gray clouds, I was just another creature trying to survive winter. My fingers were bleeding again. I didn't look at them. Looking made it real, made it hurt more than the dull throb I'd learned to ignore over the past 14 days of walking, climbing, scrounging for food that wasn't poisonous, and water that wouldn't make me sick. The branch in my hands was crooked, split down the middle where lightning had probably struck it months ago, but it was all I had. I wedged it between two others I'd already positioned, trying to form something that might resemble a wall. The whole structure leaned left like a drunk, but I kept working. The wind carried the scent of coming snow, that peculiar metallic sharpness that meant I had maybe 2 days before the storm hit. 2 days to make this pile of broken branches into something that could keep me alive. My breath came out in clouds, and I wrapped my threadbare coat tighter, feeling every hole where the fabric had given up. The left sleeve had torn completely 3 days ago, when I'd climbed a tree to escape what I'd thought was a bear. Turned out to be a boulder covered in moss. But my coat hadn't survived my panic. I used to have a home. Used to have a place by a fire where I belonged. Or at least where I was tolerated. The Silverpaw Pack had taken me in when I was 14, after my parents died in a car accident on the mountain road. It had been winter then too. Black ice and a curve my father had driven 1,000 times. The funeral had been small. My parents didn't have family, it had always been just the three of us. I remembered standing in a borrowed black dress, too big in the shoulders and too short in the hem, while they lowered 2 caskets into frozen ground. That's when Cordelia had found me. The old alpha of Silverpaw had attended the funeral, though I didn't know why at the time. Later, I learned my mother had once saved Cordelia's son from drowning when he was a child. Had pulled him from the river during a flash flood. Cordelia believed in debts, in honor, in repaying kindness with kindness. She's human. Someone had said that day, as if I couldn't hear them. As if I wasn't standing right there with ash from my parents' funeral still on my borrowed dress. Completely human, not even a dormant wolf. I'd learned what that meant quickly enough. In a world where shifters were the norm, where the ability to transform was as natural as breathing, I was the anomaly, the defect, the thing that didn't quite fit. Cordelia had looked at me with something almost like pity. "She'll have a place," she'd said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "We honor our debts. The girl stays." And I had stayed. They gave me the smallest room in the pack house, the one that flooded when it rained, where the ceiling leaked and the floorboards were warped from years of water damage. Let me eat after everyone else finished, picking at whatever remained on serving plates that had already been picked clean. I learned to be grateful for scraps, learned to make myself useful in ways that didn't require strength or speed or any of the gifts I'd never been born with. I cleaned, I cooked, I mended clothes with stitches so small they were nearly invisible. I learned which herbs helped with fever, which poultices drew out infection, which teas settled upset stomachs. I made myself indispensable in all the quiet, invisible ways that kept a pack house running. And I pretended not to notice when they talked about me like I was furniture. Pass the salt, watch out for Sarah, the gravy's good, as if I were a chair to navigate around, an obstacle in their space. It had been bearable though. Under Cordelia's leadership, there was a structure to things, a predictability. I knew my place. I stayed in it. And in return, I had a roof, food, safety. It wasn't love, but it was survival. And survival was more than many humans got in a world run by shifters. Then Cordelia died. Heart attack, the pack doctor said. Sudden. She'd gone to sleep one evening and simply hadn't woken up. Marcus, her eldest son, had inherited the title of Alpha, and everything had changed. I pushed the memory away, forcing my bleeding fingers to tie another piece of cordage stripped bark that kept breaking around the junction of 2 branches. The knot was clumsy, would probably come undone in the first strong wind, but my hands were shaking too much for precision. Marcus had wanted a pack of warriors, of pure bloodlines. He'd made that clear in his first address as Alpha, standing in the main hall with his chest puffed out and his eyes skating over me like I was a stain on his inherited throne. Silverpaw will be strong again, he'd announced. We've grown soft, allowing weakness to fester among us. We've forgotten that survival belongs to those with power, with teeth, with the will to dominate. Within 6 months, he'd found reasons to drive out everyone who didn't fit his vision. The elderly who could no longer hunt, the disabled who needed assistance, the Omega wolves whose gentle natures made them targets, and the human girl who'd never shift, never hunt, never be anything but a burden. He'd given me 3 days to leave. Called it mercy. You should be grateful, he'd said, standing in the doorway of my leaking room while I packed what little I owned into a backpack. My mother had a soft heart. I could have simply eliminated the problem. 3 days, Sarah. Then you're trespassing, and trespassers are dealt with according to pack law. I'd known what pack law meant. I'd seen what happened to rogues who crossed into Silverpaw territory. That was 2 weeks ago. I'd made it this far on foot, heading north because south led back to towns where people asked questions, where someone might recognize me and send word back to Silverpaw. East and west were other pack territories, and I knew enough about shifter politics to know that a human wandering alone through claimed land was asking to be killed. North was wilderness. But it was my death to choose. The branch I was working with suddenly snapped, the rotten wood giving way with a sound like breaking bones. I stumbled backward, catching myself against a tree, feeling the bark scrape through my coat, through the thin shirt beneath. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at my pathetic attempt at shelter. It looked like a pile of kindling, a child's fort that wouldn't even stop the wind, let alone the cold that would kill me when the storm hit. Something hot pressed behind my eyes, but I hadn't cried since the day Marcus gave his ultimatum, and I wasn't going to start now. Crying was a luxury for people who had someone to witness it, to care. Out here, tears just made your face cold, and wasted water your body needed for other things. I bent to pick up another branch, my vision blurring slightly at the edges. A handful of berries I'd found, the kind that were safe but tasted like dirt and regret. I'd seen a rabbit the day before, but I had no way to catch it, no way to kill it even if I could. My survival skills extended to boiling water and identifying plants from a field guide I'd memorized at 13. Apparently, that wasn't enough. That's when I felt it. That ancient animal awareness that something was watching. The kind of instinct that lived in the oldest part of the human brain. The part that remembered when we were prey instead of predator. The hairs on the back of my neck rose, and my heart, that traitorous muscle, began to hammer against my ribs. I straightened slowly, scanning the tree line. The forest had gone quiet. No birds. No rustle of small creatures in the underbrush. Then I saw them. Wolves. Massive ones, their fur thick with winter growth, standing in a semicircle at the edge of the clearing I'd chosen. There were at least a dozen, maybe more, in the shadows between the trees. Their eyes caught the fading afternoon light, reflecting gold and amber and something almost like fire. I'd seen pack wolves before, had lived among them in their human forms, but I'd never been on this side of an encounter, never been the prey. My legs locked, some primal part of my brain screaming contradictory orders. Run. Stay still. Climb. Fight. Surrender. Make yourself small. Make yourself big. Play dead. Don't play dead. They'll eat you anyway. The largest wolf stepped forward. He was black as a starless night, easily 4 feet at the shoulder, with eyes that weren't gold like the others, but a deep, unsettling silver. Even in wolf form, power rolled off him in waves. An alpha. I knew it the way you know when lightning is about to strike, a taste of metal on your tongue, a pressure in your chest that made breathing difficult. This was it then. After everything, after surviving my parents' death, after enduring years of being less than, after walking away from the only home I'd known, this was how it ended. Alone in a forest. torn apart by wolves who probably wouldn't even remember my name because they'd never bothered to learn it. The black wolf moved closer, and I forced myself to meet his eyes. If I was going to die, I'd do it looking at what killed me. My mother used to say that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was being terrified and doing the thing anyway. She'd meant it about small things, like trying out for school plays or learning to drive. I doubted she'd imagined I'd apply it to staring down a creature that could end me with one bite. But the attack didn't come. Instead, the black wolf stopped about 10 feet away, his massive head tilting slightly as he studied me. Then, he did something I didn't expect. He looked past me, at my pitiful shelter, at the pile of broken branches and desperate hope, at the evidence of my slow death by exposure and starvation. His ears flicked forward, and if a wolf could look contemplative, he did. The other wolves remained still, waiting. Pack dynamics. I realized they were waiting for his decision, his command. My fate was entirely in the paws of this massive creature, who could probably bring down an elk without breaking stride. I heard it then. The sound of bones shifting, reforming. It was something you never quite got used to. No matter how many times you'd been around shifters, the sound was wrong on a fundamental level, wet and crunching and organic in a way that made your stomach turn. The black wolf's form shimmered, contracted, reshaped itself into something else, into someone else. He stood before me now in human form, and I had to fight not to step back. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with the kind of build that came from a lifetime of physical power. Not the gym rat muscles some of the silver paw wolves had cultivated, but the lean, dangerous strength of a predator who'd been hunting since he could walk. His hair was dark, long enough to brush his shoulders, and his eyes, those silver eyes, remained the same. He was bare-chested despite the cold, wearing only dark pants that looked far too expensive for the middle of nowhere. Intricate patterns that I thought might be pack symbols, but from a territory I didn't recognize. Celtic knots intertwined with what looked like ancient runes, running from his collarbone down to disappear beneath his waistband. He looked at me, then at my shelter, then back at me. A muscle in his jaw tightened when he spoke. His voice was deeper than I expected, roughened by something I couldn't quite name. "You're building with dead wood." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. "It's all I could find that I could break. It won't hold." He stated it like a fact, like telling me the sky was gray or water was wet. Simple. Inevitable. I know. What else could I say? I knew it was hopeless. I'd known it with every branch I'd placed, every piece of bark I'd tried to weave together. But hopeless work was still work, still movement, still better than lying down to die. He watched me for a long moment, and I couldn't read his expression. Those silver eyes were too strange, too intense, like he could see straight through me to catalog every weakness, every fear. Then he turned, looking back at the wolves waiting in the trees. He made a sound, not quite a word, more like a command in a language older than speech. Something guttural and resonant that I felt in my chest. The wolves melted back into the forest, disappearing so quickly and silently that I might have imagined them. All except 3, who shifted as he had, becoming men who moved forward with the casual confidence of people who'd never had to question their place in the world. They were younger than the alpha, I thought, though still built like warriors. One had reddish-brown hair, and a scar across his collarbone that looked like it had come from claws. Another was fair-haired with sharp green eyes that assessed me with clinical interest, the way a doctor might examine a patient. The third was darker-skinned, quiet, watching everything with the stillness of someone who missed nothing. The alpha, because that's what he had to be looked at, the 3 men. Then gestured toward the forest behind me. "Bring timber, proper timber." They left without question, without hesitation, moving with supernatural speed into the trees. Within seconds, they'd vanished, leaving me alone with the alpha who could kill me as easily as breathing. I stood frozen, not understanding what was happening, my mind trying to catch up with a reality that had shifted too quickly. One moment, I'd been preparing to die. The next, an alpha who could have killed me without effort was... What? Helping me? Why? The word escaped before I could stop it. 1,000 years of human evolution had taught us not to question predators, not to challenge those with power over our lives, but exhaustion and desperation had stripped away my self-preservation instinct. He turned those silver eyes back to me, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in them. Not pity, I would have hated pity, but something else, something almost like recognition. Because, he said quietly, and his voice carried a weight that suggested old pain, old regrets. I know what it looks like when someone refuses to give up, even when they should.
The 3 wolves, men, returned with timber that would have taken me days to even find, let alone carry. They moved with an efficiency that spoke of years working together, decades maybe, dropping logs twice my height onto the ground with barely a sound. Each piece was carefully selected, straight grain, no rot, thick enough to withstand weather but light enough to work with. The fair-haired one caught me staring and raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Just the faintest quirk of his lips that might have been amusement. The alpha had been walking the perimeter of my pathetic attempt at shelter, occasionally crouching to examine the ground, the angle of the trees, the way the wind moved through the clearing. He moved like water, like something that had never known awkwardness or uncertainty. Every step was purposeful, deliberate. He wasn't just looking, he was reading the land the way I might read a book. When he returned, he pointed to a spot 15 feet from where I'd been building. There, he said. Higher ground. The water runs off to the east when it rains. See how the moss grows thicker on that side? And the way these roots angle? The soil drains poorly where you were building. You would have woken in a puddle every time it rained. I looked at where I'd chosen, seeing now what I'd missed. The slight depression in the earth. The way the ground was darker there, richer. Of course, I'd been so focused on finding a space sheltered by trees that I hadn't thought about drainage. Another mistake that might have killed me. Added to the growing list. The red-haired one started laying out timber with the precision of someone who'd built 100 structures. He moved with confidence, placing each log exactly where it needed to be, occasionally marking the wood with a piece of charcoal he'd pulled from somewhere. Foundation first, he said, speaking to me for the first time. His voice carried an accent I couldn't place. Something European, maybe? Scottish or Irish, though softened by time. You build from the ground up, not from hope down. It could have been cruel. The words themselves were harsh, pointing out my ignorance. But something in his tone made it sound almost kind, like he was sharing a truth rather than mocking my failures. Like he understood what it meant to learn things the hard way. I'm Finn, he added, driving a sharpened stake into the ground with his bare hands. His fingers didn't even seem to strain. The earth accepted the stake like butter, like the soil itself was eager to cooperate. That's Jasper. He nodded toward the fair-haired one who was measuring something with what looked like nothing more than his hand spans an eye. And the quiet shadow over there is Ezra. Ezra, the dark-skinned one, acknowledged his name with the slightest tilt of his head. He was measuring something using what looked like actual tools pulled from a pack I hadn't noticed him carrying. A folding rule made of brass and wood. A level with a bubble trapped in glass. A plumb line with a weight that looked hand-carved. Where had that come from? I hadn't seen any of them carrying anything when they'd arrived as wolves. Magic, I realized. They must have stashed supplies nearby, or had them brought by other pack members I hadn't seen. This wasn't a chance encounter. This was organized, deliberate. The alpha watched his pack work, occasionally giving a direction with nothing more than a glance or a small gesture. A tilt of his head would send Finn to adjust a log. A raised eyebrow made Jasper recalculate an angle. They understood him without words, moving in sync like parts of a greater whole, like musicians who'd played together so long they could anticipate each other's next note. It was beautiful and painful to watch. This thing I'd never had. This belonging that ran deeper than blood. At Silverpaw, I'd always been outside looking in. The human who ate last, who cleaned up after real pack members, who was tolerated but never truly accepted. I'd watched them move together like this, had seen the silent communication, the effortless coordination. I'd never been part of it. I stood uselessly to the side, my bleeding fingers curled against my palms, not knowing what to do with myself. I'd spent years making myself useful to a pack that barely tolerated me, learning to anticipate needs before they were spoken. But here I was just in the way. These men moved with the kind of strength and speed that made my attempts at contributing laughable. You're just going to stand there? The alpha's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts like a knife. I looked at him, finding those silver eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. There was no anger in his expression, no judgment. Just a question, simple and direct. I can't lift what they can lift. No, he agreed, and I braced for the dismissal, the reminder of my uselessness. Instead, he gestured toward a pile of smaller branches Finn had set aside. But you can sort. Straight pieces there, curved there. We'll need both. The curved ones will form the roof supports, the straight for bracing. It was such a small thing, such a simple task that even I couldn't fail at it. But the way he said it, like my contribution actually mattered, like I was a necessary part of this project rather than dead weight to be tolerated, it made something crack in my chest. I moved toward the pile before my legs could forget how to work, before the sting behind my eyes could become anything more. I sorted branches while the world took shape around me. They worked as the sun bled through the trees, painting everything gold and amber and shadow. The light caught in Finn's red hair, made Ezra's dark skin gleam like polished wood, turned Jasper's fair hair to silver. And the Alpha, he moved through it all like he was part of the forest itself, like the light bent around him the way it bent around ancient trees. The foundation went up first, just as Finn had said. Solid timber laid in a precise rectangle, each corner joined with notches that locked together like puzzle pieces. They didn't use nails, I realized. Every joint was carved to fit, would shape to hold itself together through pressure and precision alone. Then walls. Real ones. Logs fitted together with gaps so small I could barely see them, each piece selected for how it would nestle against its neighbors. Finn worked with a small axe, shaving away imperfections, creating surfaces that married together seamlessly. Jasper climbed like gravity was a suggestion, setting beams that would hold a roof. He moved along logs that were barely wide enough for a foothold, never wobbling, never hesitating. At one point, he was working 20 feet in the air, balanced on a beam with nothing beneath him but hard ground, and he was smiling. Ezra measured and adjusted, ensuring everything was level, true, perfect. He had a way of looking at a joint, tilting his head, then making the smallest adjustment that somehow made everything align. He barely spoke, but when he did, the others listened immediately. And the Alpha, he did everything. Lifted what needed lifting, cut what needed cutting, directed when needed, worked alongside his pack when direction wasn't necessary. I'd seen Alphas before. Marcus had postured and commanded from a distance, treating physical labor like it was beneath him. He'd sit in his chair in the main hall and bark orders while others worked, then take credit for whatever was accomplished. This man led from the front. His hands were as dirty as anyone's, his strength used rather than simply displayed. When Finn needed help lifting a particularly heavy beam, the Alpha was there without being asked. When Ezra's level showed a slight tilt, the Alpha was already adjusting the support before Ezra could speak. This was what real leadership looked like. I realized I didn't even know his name. What do I call you? The question slipped out during a lull when Finn and Jasper were debating the angle of a support beam, their voices carrying that particular tone of people who'd had this same argument 100 times before and enjoyed it. He looked at me from where he was securing a corner joint, his hands working the rope with practiced ease. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then his lips quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Most call me your majesty." My heart stopped. Actually stopped, then restarted with a painful lurch. Majesty. King. This wasn't just an Alpha of some random pack in the woods. This was the Alpha. The one even Marcus had spoken about in hushed, reverent tones during pack meetings. The king of the Northern Territories, ruler of the largest werewolf domain in North America. The one who controlled everything from the Canadian border down to the Great Lakes, from the Pacific coast east to the Rockies. I'd been staring down royalty and demanding to know why he was helping me. I must have looked stricken because something almost like amusement flickered across his face. Not cruel amusement, the kind that comes from watching someone suffer. But something gentler, like he was used to this reaction and found it tiresome but understandable. But you can call me Caspian. I'm Sarah. My name sounded small compared to his. Forgettable. The kind of name you'd give a housemaid or a seamstress. Nothing royal about it. I know. At my startled look, he gestured to my coat where I'd left it draped over a fallen log. The pack emblem inside. Silverpaw. I made inquiries yesterday while you slept. Asked around. You're Sarah Chin, taken in by Cordelia after your parents died. Worked in the pack house for 7 years. Exiled by Marcus 2 weeks ago with 3 days' notice. The fact that he knew all of this, that he'd taken the time to learn about me, should have been terrifying. Instead, it made me feel seen. For the first time in 7 years, someone had bothered to learn who I was beyond the human girl. I didn't know, I said, and my voice came out smaller than I'd intended. I mean, I wouldn't have what? He straightened, wiping sawdust from his hands. Question me? Good. Questions show you still have spirit left. I prefer that to cowering. Finn laughed from somewhere above us, though I wasn't sure what was funny. Jasper shook his head but was smiling too, that sharp-edged expression that suggested he knew something I didn't. She really didn't recognize you, Jasper called down. That's refreshing. How does it feel to be treated like a regular person, Your Majesty? Careful, Caspian said mildly, but there was warmth in his voice. I can still make you rebuild the entire north wall. You wouldn't. Try me. It was so normal, this teasing between them. So unlike the rigid hierarchy at Silverpaw where everyone watched their words around Marcus, where even jokes required careful calibration to avoid giving offense. This felt like family. Like people who'd chosen each other and were comfortable in that choice. I went back to sorting branches, my mind spinning. The king of the Northern Territories was building me a cabin. The most powerful alpha in North America was concerned about whether my shelter would survive winter. What? Night came faster than I expected, the way it does in late autumn when the days grow short. The temperature dropped so quickly I could see my breath thickening in the air, each exhale a small cloud that dissipated into the growing darkness. My shelter, no, my cabin now, had walls and a partial roof. 4 solid walls, each at least 8 feet high with window frames already in place. The door frame was set, waiting for an actual door. The roof was perhaps half finished, enough to provide some cover but not enough to keep out a serious rain. It was more than I'd dreamed of building in a month, let alone a single afternoon. It was the difference between surviving and simply dying slower. Ezra started a fire without asking, without even speaking. He simply gathered stones in a ring, arranged wood in a careful structure, and then, the flames caught. Impossibly quick. Wood that should have taken several minutes and multiple attempts burst into immediate, steady flame. Magic. Pack magic that I'd heard about but never seen used so casually. At Silverpaw, magic was hoarded, saved for important things. Here it was used for convenience, for comfort. The warmth drew me like a moth, my body remembering what it felt like not to be cold straight through to the bone. I'd been cold for so long that warmth felt almost painful, like thawing frozen fingers under hot water. Sit, Caspian said, and it wasn't quite an order, but wasn't quite a suggestion either. Something in between, the way you might tell a friend to relax in your home. I sat on a log Finn had positioned near the fire. The heat felt like a living thing against my face, warming skin that had been numb for hours. Almost painful after so long in the cold. I watched the flames dance and tried not to think about what this meant, what I owed, what would be demanded in return. Nothing was free. I'd learned that lesson young and had the scars to prove it. You're bleeding. Jasper appeared beside me with a first aid kit that looked military grade. Heavy canvas, multiple compartments, the kind of thorough preparation that suggested someone who'd seen real combat. He'd put on a shirt at some point, thick wool that probably cost more than everything I owned combined. It's nothing. I tried to curl my fingers inward, hide the evidence of my weakness. Blood had soaked through the makeshift bandages I'd wrapped around my palms this morning, strips torn from the hem of my shirt. It's not nothing. He didn't reach for my hands, didn't force anything. Just waited, patient as stone, until I slowly extended them toward the firelight. The cuts weren't deep, but there were many, some old and half-healed, some fresh from today's work. My palms were calloused in strange places, the skin of someone who'd learned labor through desperation rather than training. Blisters had formed and popped and formed again, leaving raw patches that wept clear fluid. Jasper cleaned them with something that stung badly enough to make my eyes water, but I didn't flinch. I'd learned long ago that showing pain just made people uncomfortable, made them treat you like you were fragile. Better to endure silently. You've been alone for a while, he said quietly, wrapping my right hand with practiced efficiency. The bandages were clean, white, the kind hospitals used. Where had he gotten them? 2 weeks. Then, because something about the firelight and the unexpected kindness made me reckless, made me forget the walls I'd built, but I've been alone longer than that. He glanced up at me, those green eyes sharp and assessing. Not judging. Just seeing. Really seeing, the way doctors are trained to look past what people show to what they hide. Silverpaw pack. My whole body went rigid. How did you? Your coat. He nodded toward where I'd finally taken it off, draped over a nearby branch. The threadbare thing with its patches and repairs has their emblem stitched inside. Faded, but visible if you know what to look for. And he touched my collarbone gently, above the neckline of my shirt. You have a scar here. Shaped like a crescent. That's from the Silver Paw initiation bite. They mark their pack members, even the human ones. I'd forgotten about that. The scar Cordelia had given me the day I officially joined the pack, a shallow bite that had healed white against my skin. "Your pack now," she'd said. "This marks you as ours. Protected. Protected. Right up until Marcus decided I wasn't worth protecting anymore. I'm not with them anymore," I said, and hated how my voice shook. Clearly. He moved to my left hand, gentle despite his obvious strength. Those hands could probably crush stone, but they handled my injuries with the delicacy of someone caring for something precious. "Marcus is a fool." I blinked at him. "You didn't speak about alphas that way, especially not ones who controlled significant territory. It was dangerous, disrespectful. The kind of thing that could start territory wars." But Jasper said it like he was commenting on the weather, like Marcus's opinion mattered less than dust. "He has strong ideas about pack purity," I said carefully, using the exact words I'd heard Marcus use in his speeches. "He believes weakness dilutes strength. That packs survive through power, not compassion." "He has strong ideas about his own importance," Finn interjected from across the fire. He was cooking something. Rabbit, I thought, skinned and spitted over the flames. The smell made my stomach clench with hunger I'd been ignoring. Purity is just the excuse. Control is the goal. He wants everyone dependent on his approval, his authority. Can't have that if people remember the old alpha actually cared about them. Caspian had been silent through this exchange, standing slightly apart from the fire's glow, his face half in shadow. But now he spoke, his voice carrying a weight that made even the flames seem to bend toward him, to listen. "You're human." Not a question. A statement, flat and certain. "Yes." I met his eyes across the fire, refusing to look away even though instinct screamed at me to lower my gaze before an alpha came. Completely. No wolf, no chance of one. My parents were human too. No shifter blood at all. And Silverpaw took you in. Anyway, after my parents died, the old alpha, Cordelia, she believed in... I struggled for the word, for something that could encompass what Cordelia had been. Compassion, I guess. Honor. She said family wasn't just about blood or fur. That pack meant taking care of each other, all of us, not just the strong ones. But Marcus doesn't share that belief. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway, the words spilling out like I'd been waiting years to say them to someone who might actually listen. No. He gave me 3 days to leave. Said I should be grateful for the warning. That he was being more merciful than I deserved. He called it mercy because he could have just. I trailed off, not wanting to finish that sentence. "Killed you," Caspian finished for me, his voice flat. Yes, he could have. The silence that followed was heavy with truths nobody wanted to speak. Finn focused intently on the rabbit, turning it with more attention than it required. Ezra fed the fire with precise, careful movements, each stick placed exactly right. Jasper finished wrapping my hands and sat back, his job complete but his presence still attentive. I should have been afraid. I was surrounded by predators who could tear me apart without effort, led by a king whose reputation made seasoned alphas nervous. I'd heard the stories about Caspian. How he'd united the northern territories through a combination of diplomacy and ruthless violence. How he'd killed challengers in single combat. How he commanded the largest army of shifters on the continent. But I wasn't afraid. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. It was absurd. Illogical. Probably stupid. But there it was anyway, settling in my chest like a warm stone. A certainty that despite their power, despite their predator nature, these men wouldn't hurt me. "Why are you helping me?" The question returned, more urgent now that I knew who he was. "You're the Alpha King. You don't have time to build cabins for random humans in the woods. You have territories to manage, packs to oversee, politics to navigate. Why this? Why me?" Caspian was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. The fire crackled. The rabbit dripped fat that sizzled in the flames. Somewhere in the forest, an owl called, its voice lonely in the darkness. Then he moved into the firelight fully, and I could see his face clearly, strong features marked by old scars, eyes that had seen too much, a mouth set in lines that suggested he smiled rarely and meant it even less. There was something ancient in those eyes, something that spoke of centuries of burden even though he couldn't have been more than 35. "I had a sister once," he said finally, and the words fell like stones into still water. "I had a sister once," Caspian said, and the words fell like stones into still water. "Human. Fully human like you." The past tense landed like a blow. Had a sister. I knew what that meant. The pack, my father's pack, barely tolerated her. She was bright, hopeful, Thought she could earn their acceptance through hard work and kindness. Thought if she just tried hard enough, proved herself useful enough, they'd eventually see her as one of them. He paused, his silver eyes distant, looking at something I couldn't see. Something in the past that still haunted him. Her name was Lyanna. My half-sister, technically. My father's daughter from before he met my mother. Her mother died when she was young. Fever, nothing magical could fix it. My father brought Lyanna to live with the pack when she was 8. I was 12. Finn had stopped turning the rabbit. Jasper stared into the fire like he could see ghosts in the flames. Ezra's hands had stilled on the wood he was arranging. They'd heard this story before, I realized, but it still affected them, still hurt. She was everything I wasn't, Caspian continued, his voice carefully controlled, each word measured. Where I was serious, she laughed. Where I was cautious, she was brave. Where I learned to fight, she learned to heal. She had this way of seeing the good in people, even when they didn't deserve it. He moved closer to the fire, and I could see the pain etched in the lines around his eyes, the set of his jaw. The pack treated her the way your pack treated you. Gave her the worst room. Let her eat last. Made her work twice as hard for half the recognition. She cleaned, cooked, mended clothes. Learned herbalism because the pack doctor needed an assistant and no one else wanted to do the tedious work of grinding medicines and organizing supplies. My chest tightened. It was like listening to my own story told through someone else's mouth. She never complained. Not once. She'd come to my room sometimes at night after everyone else was asleep, and she'd tell me about her day like it was an adventure. Finn taught me a new knot today, she'd say. Or, I helped deliver a baby today, Cass. A real baby. The mother let me hold him. She found joy in the smallest things. How old was she? I asked quietly. 19 when she died. His voice went flat on that word. That final. She'd been with the pack for 11 years. 11 years of trying to prove herself, to earn a place that should have been given freely. The fire crackled. The wind moved through the trees. And Caspian stood there, the most powerful alpha in North America, looking suddenly, devastatingly human. There was a rogue, he said. A wolf who'd been exiled from his pack for killing another member over a territory dispute. He was living in the mountains, attacking livestock, causing problems. My father wanted him dead, wanted to make an example. Rogues who caused trouble in our territory had to be dealt with swiftly. He rubbed his face with one hand and I saw how tired he looked. How old, despite his relatively young appearance. I was leading the hunting party. 20 of our best warriors. It should have been simple. Track the rogue, eliminate him, return home. But Lyanna? He paused, something breaking in his voice. She begged to come along. Said she could help track, that she'd been studying animal behavior, that she wouldn't get in the way. She wanted so badly to prove she was valuable on a hunt, not just in the kitchen or the infirmary. You said no, I guessed. I said no. I told her it was too dangerous, that she had no business on a warrior's mission. I was harsh about it. Told her to stay where she belonged, doing what she was good at. He looked at me then and his eyes were full of a regret so deep it seemed bottomless. She cried. I'd never seen her cry before. But I was so certain I was right, so sure I was protecting her. Finn spoke then, his accent thicker with emotion. She followed anyway. Stayed far enough back that we didn't notice until we'd already cornered the rogue. She was trying to help, Jasper added quietly. Saw the rogue circling behind us trying to flank. She threw a rock to alert us, to draw our attention to the threat. And it worked, Caspian said. We saw the rogue turn to face him. But in doing so, we took our eyes off another rogue. We didn't know there were two. Didn't know the first one had a brother, also exiled, also dangerous. The silence that followed was suffocating. The second rogue went for the weakest target. Caspian's voice had gone cold now, mechanical, like he was reciting facts to distance himself from the pain. The human girl who had no way to defend herself. By the time I realized what was happening, by the time I turned around, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. I killed them both, he said instead. Both rogues. Tore them apart with my bare hands while my pack held me back from completely losing control. But it was too late. She was already gone. Died in my arms while I tried to stop the bleeding, tried to tell her I was sorry, that I should have let her stay home, should have protected her better. I felt tears on my face and didn't remember starting to cry. The last thing she said was, I'm sorry. Caspian's voice cracked. She was dying because she tried to help me, tried to save my life, and she was apologizing. For not being good enough. For failing. For being human. Ezra stood and walked into the forest. I heard him several yards away, the sound of grief that couldn't be contained. Finn had his head bowed, his shoulders shaking. Jasper was crying silently, tears reflecting firelight. I became Alpha 3 months later, Caspian said. My father stepped down. Said he couldn't lead anymore, not after losing Lyanna. He blamed himself for bringing her into pack life, for not protecting her. He died a year later. Heartbreak, the healers said. I've never heard of a shifter dying of heartbreak before, but there's no other explanation. I'm so sorry, I whispered. The words were pathetically inadequate. I don't want your pity. His eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that stole my breath. I want you to understand that when I saw you building with broken branches, refusing to quit even when any sane person would have, I saw her. Saw what she might have been if someone had helped instead of judged. If someone had valued her determination instead of dismissing her because she was human. He moved closer, close enough that I could see the silver in his eyes swirling like smoke. You remind me of her. That same stubborn refusal to give up. That same quiet strength that people mistake for weakness because it doesn't come with claws and fangs. You survived 2 weeks alone in wilderness that kills trained wolves. You survived 7 years in a pack that treated you as less than. And you're still here, still trying, still fighting. I don't feel strong, I admitted. I feel like I'm barely holding together. Strength isn't about never breaking, Finn said, his voice rough. It's about breaking and still getting back up. Lyanna taught us that, Jasper added. She broke 100 times under that pack's cruelty. But she got up every single time. Until the one time she couldn't. I made a promise to her, Caspian said. Standing over her grave, I promised that I would never let another human suffer in my territory the way she suffered. That I would never let someone's worth be determined by their ability to shift, to fight, to dominate. That's why my policies are what they are. Why I've been integrating humans into pack life, giving them positions of authority, treating them as equals. Is that why you have opposition? I asked, remembering what Vivian had said about tensions. Some of the older alphas believe I've gone too soft. That I'm undermining centuries of tradition. That allowing humans into positions of power weakens the pack structure. His voice hardened. They're wrong. Lyanna was stronger than most of the warriors in my father's pack. She just showed it differently. He sat down on a log across from me, and suddenly he wasn't the terrifying Alpha King anymore. He was just a man who'd lost someone he loved and was trying to make sure it never happened again. I don't need you to repay me for the cabin, he said. I don't want your gratitude or your service. I want you to survive. That's enough. That's everything. The rabbit was finally ready, and Finn divided it among us with the kind of precision that ensured everyone got an equal share. They produced bread from somewhere, fresh, still warm, the kind that required an oven. And cheese, sharp and creamy. And even a flask of something that Jasper poured into wooden cups that Ezra had somehow conjured from his magical pack. Spiced cider, Jasper explained, handing me a cup. It's cold enough for it. The cider was warm and sweet and tasted like cinnamon and apples and everything good about autumn. The food was the best thing I'd tasted in weeks, maybe months. At Silverpaw, I'd eaten scraps, leftovers, things no one else wanted. This was a feast. Eat slowly, Finn cautioned. Your stomach isn't used to rich food. Too much too fast and you'll be sick. I tried to pace myself, but it was hard when every bite tasted like salvation. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of quiet that comes when words aren't necessary. The fire crackled. The forest settled into its nighttime rhythms. And I felt for the first time since my parents died like I belonged somewhere. What will you do? Ezra asked suddenly. His voice was deep, quieter than the others, but it carried weight. When we leave. The question hung in the air like smoke. I'll manage, I said, trying to sound confident. The cabin will protect me from the weather. I'll set snares for rabbits, gather what I can find. It'll be enough. Jasper and Finn exchanged a look that I couldn't interpret. It won't be, Caspian said flatly. You'll last maybe a month, 2 if you're lucky. Then winter will kill you, or rogues will find you, or you'll get sick from malnutrition and freeze to death in your sleep. The brutal honesty should have scared me. Instead, it was almost refreshing. No platitudes, no false comfort. Just truth. Then what do you suggest? I asked. Go back to Silverpaw? Marcus would kill me the moment I crossed the border. Find another pack? They'd want to know why I was exiled, and no pack takes in someone thrown out by another alpha. Go to a human city? I have no money, no skills that translate to city life, no identification papers because I've been living in pack territory since I was 14. You could come with us, Finn said. The words dropped into the conversation like a boulder into a pond. To the capital? Jasper leaned forward. We have space. We have resources. We could protect you. No. Caspian's voice was sharp. I won't bring her into that situation. What situation? I asked. He stood, pacing now, agitated in a way I hadn't seen before. The capital is dangerous right now. There are factions that oppose my policies, that see humans as inferior. Bringing you there would paint a target on your back. They'd use you to get to me to prove their point about human weakness. So I should just stay here and die? I didn't mean for the words to come out so bitter. No. He stopped pacing, turned to face me. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out a solution that doesn't end with you dead or in danger. Maybe that's not your decision to make, I said quietly. Maybe I get to choose my own risks. His eyes flashed silver, bright enough to reflect moonlight that wasn't there. You don't understand what you'd be walking into. Then explain it to me. Don't just decide I'm too weak or too human or too whatever to handle the truth. The silence that followed was tense, charged with something I couldn't name. There's a faction, Caspian finally said, sitting back down. Led by an alpha named Theron. He controls 3 packs in the Eastern Territories, old bloodlines that have been pure wolf for generations. He believes my policies are weakening our species. That allowing humans into pack life dilutes our strength, our traditions, our very nature. He's challenged Caspian twice for leadership, Jasper added. Both times in formal combat. Both times Caspian won, but barely. Theron is smart, Finn continued. He's not just a brute. He's strategic, political. He's been building alliances, promising the old guard a return to traditional values if they support him. And right now, Ezra said softly, bringing a human to the capital would give him exactly the ammunition he needs. He'd say Caspian is so obsessed with humans that he's abandoning his own kind. That he's weak, compromised. But that's ridiculous, I protested. Helping someone doesn't make you weak. No, Caspian agreed. But it can be made to look weak by someone skilled in manipulation. Theron would twist it, make it about emotion over duty, sentiment over strength. So your hands are tied. My hands are tied. I looked into the fire, watching the flames dance and shift. Then I'll stay here. Survive as long as I can. At least I'll die free. No. The word came out harsh, almost a growl. I didn't save Lyanna. I won't fail again. I'm not your sister, I said gently. You don't owe me her life. Maybe not. His eyes met mine across the fire. But I owe it to myself. I need to know that this time I made the right choice. That I helped instead of turning away. The weight of that hung between us. There might be a way, Vivian's voice came from the darkness beyond the fire. We all turned. She stepped into the firelight, moving with the grace of a predator. I hadn't heard her approach, hadn't sensed her presence. How long had she been listening? Vivian, Caspian stood. I thought you were scouting the western border. I finished. And I heard enough to know we need to talk. She looked at me, her amber eyes assessing. All of us. She settled onto a log with fluid grace, and suddenly the atmosphere shifted. This wasn't just friends around a campfire anymore. This was a council of war. The girl comes to the capital, Vivian said. But not as a charity case. Not as someone you rescued out of pity. Then how? Caspian asked. Vivian smiled, sharp and clever. As a wolf naturalist. A human who spent years studying pack dynamics, who has unique insights into wolf behavior precisely because she's not one of us. Someone whose perspective is valuable, whose knowledge is useful. But I'm not, I started. You've lived in a pack for 7 years, Vivian interrupted. You've observed things that wolves take for granted. You understand our social structures from an outsider's perspective. That's exactly the kind of fresh viewpoint we need for the integration programs. It's brilliant, Jasper said slowly. It positions her as an asset rather than a liability. It gives her legitimacy, Finn added. A role that makes sense, that serves a purpose beyond just Caspian felt sorry for her. It also puts her directly in the line of fire, Caspian said. Working on integration programs means dealing with exactly the people who oppose them. Better that than dying alone in the woods, Vivian countered. At least in the capital, she'll have protection. A purpose. A chance to actually live instead of just survive. She turned to me. What do you say, girl? Want to come study wolves in their natural habitat? I looked around the circle. At Finn with his kind eyes and accent that spoke of distant lands. At Jasper with his healer's hands and clinical assessment. At Ezra, who spoke rarely but saw everything. At Vivian, who'd appeared from nowhere with a solution. And at Caspian, whose sister's ghost had brought him to this forest, to my pathetic shelter, to this moment. Yes, I said. Yes, I'll come. Caspian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Then we leave at dawn. The capital is 3 days' journey. We'll need to prepare her, teach her what she needs to know. I'll work with her on pack politics, Vivian said. I'll teach her court etiquette, Jasper offered. How to navigate formal situations. Self-defense, Finn added. Basic stuff, just enough to not be completely helpless. And I'll teach her about our history, Ezra said quietly. The real history, not the propaganda version. She'll need to understand what she's walking into. 3 days, Caspian said, and his eyes found mine across the fire. 3 days to turn a human girl into someone who can survive the wolf court. Are you sure about this? I thought about my parents, who taught me that courage was doing the thing even when you were terrified. About Cordelia, who believed in debts and honor. About Marcus, who'd thrown me out like garbage. About 2 weeks alone in the wilderness, building with broken branches, refusing to give up. About Lyanna, who died trying to prove she was enough. I'm sure, I said. For the first time since I'd met him, Caspian smiled. Really smiled, the expression transforming his face from severe to almost beautiful. Then welcome to the Northern Territories, he said. Officially. That night, I slept by the fire wrapped in blankets that smelled of pine and wood smoke. I slept warm and safe for the first time in 2 weeks, surrounded by wolves who'd chosen to protect me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And I dreamed of a girl with Caspian's eyes who'd never gotten the chance to be seen for who she really was.